There's something in the Pacific Ocean. For years, something has been echoing deep, deep below the surface of the Pacific Ocean. It started up in August 1991 when the Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory finally turned on its sound surveillance system. From the very first second, the sound was there, odd, eerie, unexplainable. They named it 𝐓𝐡𝐞𝐫𝐞'𝐬 since, when sped up, it sounds like a continuously rising note. And ever since its initial discovery, it's been there, sounding up around the same time every year, still as odd and unexplainable as before. It stayed relatively consistent throughout the years, only diminishing slightly in strength and loudness, still anomalous. Yesterday this changed. Yesterday the world, as we know it, changed. I've worked as a marine geologist for the National Oceanic and Atmosphere Administration, NOAA, for almost a decade now, and I've always been wholly fascinated by 𝐓𝐡𝐞𝐫𝐞𝐬, so much so that I studied it officially as one of my many projects. It baffled me, consumed my imagination, and left me speculating late into the night, which is why I was awake when I got the call at 2 in the morning. Dr. Pike? Why, yes, I breathed, sitting up, turning on the light, then squinting in the sudden brightness. Sorry to wake you. Should I call back later? No, I mean, who is this? Sorry, this is Matt Miller. I work for the Joint Institute for Marine and Atmospheric Research, JMAR. I was told to call you, let you know what's happening. What's happening? I leaned over and grabbed my glasses, flicking them open and shoving them on my face. Well, it's actually quite exciting, I think. It's 𝐓𝐡𝐞𝐫𝐞𝐬. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. 𝐓𝐡𝐞𝐫𝐞𝐬. The voice on the other end sounded eager, breathless when it said, "It's changing." I left at 2:43 a.m. and got to Santa Barbara 20 minutes later, pulling onto an almost deserted University of California campus. I was told that my project head and some of my colleagues would be meeting me at Webb Hall to discuss the implications of 𝐓𝐡𝐞𝐫𝐞𝐬's changes, but when I entered the room, there were only 2 people inside, one I recognized and one I didn't. Ah, Dr. Pike. I'm the director of marine geology here at UCSB. Dr. Joan Leo, yes, I've admired your work for years. Leo smiled, shaking my hand warmly in both of hers before saying, "And this is..." The middle-aged man next to her took a step forward, grasping my hand in his. He was wearing a smooth black suit and looked like he had been awake for days. "Cooper." We shook once, twice, then let go. Leo turned to me. "Cooper called me early this morning with some, concerning information. Please." She gestured to one of the padded seats surrounding the conference table, and I sat down along with Cooper and Leo. He took out a black folder and pulled out 3 photographs, sliding them towards me without saying a word. I picked them up, not knowing what to expect, not expecting my mouth to drop and my skin to prickle. "What is this?" Leo and Cooper looked at each other. "We were hoping you could help us find out." The first picture was a map of the sound wave fluctuations, and I could clearly see that 𝐓𝐡𝐞𝐫𝐞𝐬 was getting louder, faster. I set it down. The next was a blurry sonar image of something strange, something large. I turned it sideways, then upside down, unable to make it out. The third and final picture made me audibly gasp. It was another sonar image, clearer this time. It looked like an entire section of the ocean floor had come unhinged and was rising towards the surface. It was huge, fascinating. The image was still relatively indistinct, but it looked oblong, cigar-shaped. This is impossible." Cooper nodded gravely. "We thought so too, until we organized an emergency dive with our fellows at JMAR. They, well, I'll just let you listen." He pulled out his phone, placing it on the table, and pressed play. At first, the sound coming from it was barely audible. And then, like a dirge rising up from the grave, I heard it, a deep, resounding, booming noise unlike anything I've ever heard before. It sounded like there was some intelligence to it, like it was trying to speak. Suddenly, the sound shifted, and it was higher, more recognizable as the sound I had come to know as 𝐓𝐡𝐞𝐫𝐞𝐬. But it sounded more urgent, and it was quicker, like it was calling out for something. Cooper picked up his phone when the sound stopped, leaving us in an eerie, palpable silence. Beside him, Leo's eyes were distant, her elbows resting on the table, her fingers steepled. I glanced at both of them, voiceless, stunned, before looking back down at the pictures in front of me. There's something else. it was Leo. I looked up at her, and she continued. Jimar has observed a multitude of marine creatures congregating to that area. Whole pods of whales, schools of fish, hundreds of sharks. They all seem to be swimming the same direction, in a spiral over where that sound and that thing, she pointed to the photo of the cigar-shaped monstrosity, were triangulated in the Pacific. I cleared my throat. If I may ask, how did you get all this information? I was looking directly at Cooper. Do you work for NOAA, for Jimar? He shook his head. I'm affiliated with them. A liaison, if you will. And I was given the data by a colleague at Jimar. He thought I would be best equipped to, handle the situation. But I wasn't. So I called Joan here, and we were referred to you by the director of NOAA. Here we are. Dr. Pike, Leo said, neatly stacking the photographs together. You'll be given full access to all the data we collect, and all our resources will be at your disposal. We want to help you find out what this thing may be, even if it's just a totally natural but never observed occurrence. Here's my card. She slid a light blue card towards me. And mine, the man said, taking a matte black card from his wallet and placing it atop the photographs. Thank you, I said, not knowing what else to say. This is all so strange. Horrific, really. The implications of what that might be, what it might do. Earthquakes, tsunamis, my voice tapered off. Where do we go from here? Cooper sighed and shrugged on his jacket, standing up and collecting all the papers. Tomorrow, he said resolutely. What about tomorrow? He looked at me. Tomorrow we go out there, dive, see what it might be. Now, we've all got work to do before that. I'll be in touch. He walked towards the door, stopped, and added, and don't forget to get some sleep. Good night, Dr. Pike. Leo gave me a tight-lipped smile and followed Cooper out of the room. But I can't sleep. I can't stop thinking about what that thing might be, why it has gotten louder, what it all means. It's been almost exactly 24 hours since I found out about 𝐓𝐡𝐞𝐫𝐞 and the anomaly causing it. I've spent the past day collecting and observing the data Jimar sent us, trying to piece together the puzzle. My mind is reeling. Soon, we'll be sailing off into the literal unknown. I can't sleep, and I'm worried. I finally fell asleep around 4 in the morning, or at least I think I did. One moment I was staring into the darkness, thinking about those photographs, and the next my phone was vibrating on the table next to me. Bleary-eyed, I reached for it and squinted as light of the screen came on, blinding me. It was only 6:13 a.m. An unknown number was calling me. I ignored it and set it back down. Not even a minute later, it was vibrating again. I sighed, slid it towards me, and pressed accept. Hello. Dr. Pike, sorry to wake you so early. It's Cooper. Hope you got at least some sleep. What? Oh, yes, I did. A beat passed, and then Cooper cleared his throat. Good, because I'm outside your apartment building. What? I'm outside. They're waiting for us. Over the night, the past few hours, really, 𝐓𝐡𝐞𝐫𝐞 has, his voice trailed off. Well, it's best I told you in person. I'm in the Black Jack. Oh, and don't forget your towel. 10 minutes later, I was outside in the passenger seat of Cooper's sleek black car. The light from the sun was just beginning to peek out over the mountains, making the sky explode in brilliant purples and reds. Cooper wiggled the stick, shifted into first, and pulled out a lot. I cracked the window and felt the cool morning air wash across my face, stirring me into wakefulness. So, he said, keeping his eyes on the road. The sound, 𝐓𝐡𝐞𝐫𝐞. As I'm sure you know, it's been diminishing in volume since 1991. Or so we thought. Turns out it wasn't getting quieter, it was moving away from PMEL. Moving north from the coast of Antarctica towards Hawaii. Which is why Jimar heard it getting louder, I said, catching on, my eyes growing wide. Precisely, he said, shifting up third as we pulled on a highway. So that means it's moving fast. Cooper glanced at me, concern clear in his expression. He shifted to fourth, really goddamn fast. But that's not all. You'd expect something that big would affect its environment, because huge waves disrupt the currents, even shift the weather pattern slightly. It's doing none of those things. It's like it isn't actually there, like it's just sliding through, cutting the waters. It's spooky. I looked at him in total disbelief. Yeah, that's pretty goddamn spooky. Where is it now? He looked at me, then back towards the road. The light from the rising sun was bright, angled, and he flipped down the visor, shading his eyes, before saying, "About 350 nautical miles from the California coastline." We pulled into the marina before the sun had fully risen. I could see a sizable gray vessel and a small congregation of people standing by the dock in front of it. Some of them were wearing Marine uniforms. I looked questioningly at Cooper. He shrugged and said simply, "It's become a matter of interest to those who protect our national security." He parked and we got out, walking towards the group. I could see Joe and Leo standing in the forefront, surrounded by a team of scientists. The Marines stood by, watchful. A few were staring intently at Cooper. "Dr. Pike, Cooper, good morning." "Please," Leo said, gesturing behind her at the vessel. "We're in a bit of hurry." Luckily, the Navy has agreed to assist us with one of their vessels. It's faster. As we walked up the gangplank and onto the vessel, I felt a growing sense of dread rising up, threatening to take me over and turn me around back towards the safety of land. I ignored it and watched solemnly as they withdrew the plank and pushed off. The boat was fast, very fast. "This way, we've set up in here." Leo led us towards the stern and into a well-equipped cabin complete with a round table littered with paper graphs, sketches, pictures, pencils, and one very large, old-looking sextant. I could see that some of the charts represented the speed of the object. It was phenomenally fast. Leo turned to me as her team of scientists spread out to the different stations around the room. Some were observing sonar. Others were charting the topography of the ocean floor. I watched mesmerized, slightly in shock, unable to fully comprehend what was happening. Leo gestured to the table and the room at large. "Up sweep Central. We're trying to track it, see if it gets any closer to the coast. But it seems to have stopped over a fixed point. At first it looked like it might have been moving with the ocean floor current, an inanimate object riding the tide. But it seems to have stopped at a fixed point, standing still against the current. Which is strange to say the least," Leo sighed. She looked exhausted. "Have any ideas, Dr. Pike?" I glanced at Cooper. He was studying a few of the papers on the table. I looked back at Leo. "Geologically wise? Very, very few. I did have some, but its recent movements and changes have since ruled those out. Maybe it's some sort of animal weave yet to discover." Leo shook her head. "Can't be. That big and that fast. Impossible. What do you think, Cooper?" He set the papers down, looking thoughtful, then said in a measured tone, "I think it's big, and I think it's fast, and I also think speculation kills the surprise." 3 hours passed in a frantic blur. The data we were receiving was wildly impossible. The sound the thing was making was off the charts, and it seemed to have grown in size. The animals that were once congregating near were swiftly leaving, and we could see an uncountable number of whales and sharks and fish all swimming away from the direction we were heading. "Sort of makes you wish you brought a fishing pole," Cooper said, peering wistfully out the cabin window towards the ocean below us. I shot him a look, unsure whether he was being serious or joking. He smiled. "Really, Cooper?" Leo said, bustling over with a stack of topography paper in her arms. "No, I hate the ocean and fishing. Just try to lighten the mood before our impending doom," he said, smiling wider. Before Leo could reply, an ear-splitting alarm sounded, making everyone cover their ears as pain etched its way swiftly across our faces. It cut off almost as suddenly as it started, and the vessel slowed to a dead stop. A Marine poked her head into the cabin and said urgently, "You got to see this." We all ran towards the door and down the length of the vessel, staring off the starboard side. Above us, the clouds were thickening, stirring, like they were brewing up a perfect storm. And I could clearly make out hundreds of birds whirling, swirling above us like a cyclone. The water around us was dead still and mirror smooth, and strangely clear, like all the sand and the silt and the garbage had been sieved away, leaving it totally transparent. I looked into the depths and gasped. It was there, silent, strange. It was distorted in the water, but clearly the color of night or the void itself. It looked close enough to touch, like if I just leaned over the railing and eased my hand into the still waters, I would feel it slipping beneath my fingers, the consistency of goo. I shuddered. "Holy shit," I whispered, watching as its image undulated in the water. It looked like some of the blackness was oozing out of it, rising in long tendrils towards us. No one spoke for a good 10 minutes before one of the Marines called out the teams they would be sending out. But the two scientists Leo was going to send, scared from the sighting of the thing itself, backed out, saying it wasn't worth it, that they would just study it from the relative safety of the vessel. Leo, herself, was even apprehensive and looked around beseechingly to the other scientists. Many of them looked away or slyly returned to the cabin. Cooper glanced at me and raised his eyebrows. "You want me to go down there?" "Nah, I'll go with you." His face was earnest, calm. I hesitated momentarily before nodding my head. "Okay." As we walked towards the drop crane, Leo called out behind us. "Oh, if it's possible to collect a sample of whatever that is, that would be ideal." "That is a fantastic idea," Cooper said, so seriously I'm sure he was being sarcastic. Leo didn't seem to notice, or if she did, she ignored him. We went down in 4 submersibles, 2 to each sub, all suited up just in case the worst happened. I hadn't dived in years and could feel my pulse quicken as our turn to enter the sub approached. We climbed in, and Cooper took up the controls. My stomach dropped with the sub as we fell into the ocean and then kept falling down into the crystalline waters below. Around us, the lights from the other subs flickered and flashed in the water, reflected back to us at strange angles. Cooper eased the sub forward, seemingly a pro at the controls. Each sub headed in a different direction while we headed straight down, directly towards it. Around us, I could almost feel the crushing weight of the water, wholly encompassing us, making us slow. We were out of our element, and I was scared. Cooper steered silently beside me with vigilance, his breathing steady, measured, making me feel a little bit safer. He opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, I yelled with fright and pointed. The blackness was suddenly gone and was instead replaced by a sickly ruddy red color that swiftly switched to a blinding white. Almost as soon as it had appeared, the white was gone and it was black again. A harsh static sputtered around us, making me jump. Then a voice rang out. "All submersibles halt and resurface." Now, there was a bump from below, and Cooper muttered, "Shit," trying to maneuver the sub upwards, but it made a harsh grinding noise, and the smell of something burning rose up around us. He looked at me, handed me my mask, and said, "How fast can you swim?" Even through the wetsuit, I could feel the chill of the waters around us as we pushed ourselves through the open hatch of the sinking sub. Suddenly, the current shifted, and it felt warm, almost tropical. I began to swim, following the path Cooper was taking. And as I swam, I could hear 3 things: the sound of my own breathing, struggling to remain steady, calm, my heartbeat loud, powerful, consistent, pulsing in my ears, pounding around in my skull, and finally the eerie, haunting sound of the thing below. It sounded like it was calling out, asking questions, speaking. I fought the urge to look down, frightened that I might see it looking back, reaching out for me. I felt a sharp, painful tug on my arm, so powerful it swung me sideways, upsetting my mask, and I yelled out, feeling it fall from my face. Panicking now, I thrashed about, feeling myself being pulled downwards. And then suddenly my mask was being shoved onto my face, and I opened my eyes. Cooper, knife flashing in the distorted light around us, was expertly cutting at the blackened tendril wrapped around my arm. It extended all the way down to the oblong shape. It was white again, and I thought I could make out a dilated pupil looking up at us. There was a slight snapping noise, a high-pitched yammer, and the tendril retracted down. Finally loose, he tugged me upwards, and we began to swim again. The tendril, still wrapped around my arm, was leaking a jelly-like purple substance that refused to mix with the water around us, sinking below like an unusual oil. We breached the surface, and 4 different pairs of arms reached down and pulled us, sputtering and limp, onto the boat and then up onto the larger vessel. I lay there, my heart pounding painfully against my throat, rendering my voice useless. I felt a tug and looked to my left. Cooper was gently peeling the black tendril from my arm. He tossed it towards Leo, who stood close by, watching us with wide eyes. She made a squeaking noise and hopped back from it. "Sample," Cooper breathed before leaning back against the railing and bursting out in uncontrollable laughter. I watched him for a moment, then joined in, feeling the laughter peel out of my belly, a gut reaction to our near brush with death, or worse. We laughed and laughed for a good few minutes, while the seabirds swirled overhead and the Marines and scientists stood around us, dumbfounded. Those who were in the other subs were crowded on the other side of the deck, looking at us with round, frightened eyes. The sun melted slowly into the western horizon, coloring the sky in outrun pink and orange. When our laughter finally abated, he stood, helped me onto my feet, and together we looked out into that great expanse, constantly undulating, constantly shifting. It is unfathomable, mysterious, expertly hiding what lies beneath. Cooper inhaled deeply, ran a hand through his salt-stiff hair, suddenly serious, and said, "Fuck the ocean." My feet touched the sweet sturdiness of the Santa Barbara coastline about 3 hours later. I wanted to lean down and kiss it, but thought it would look too cliché, so I instead opted for turning to Cooper and saying, "I could use a stiff one right now." He nodded. "Absolutely." A tinny tune sounded, and Cooper pulled out his phone. "Damn, maybe next time. Dr. Pike, a pleasure." He held out his hand, and I shook it once, twice before letting go. "Call me if anything changes," he said again, turning toward his car and walking away. "Thanks for saving my life," I called out after him. He gave me a quick thumbs up before sliding into his smooth black car. I watched him drive away into the night. I looked around imploringly. Leo saw me and offered to take me home. Since then, I've been in contact with her and her team, unable to sleep, unable to even concentrate, speculate, imagine what it was we saw, what it was doing, why it attacked. The sample they collected has only added more mystery to what happened. At first, it didn't seem incredibly extraordinary until one of the scientists discovered that its chemical makeup wasn't only organic, that it seemed, against all odds, mechanical. An organic machine. Even stranger is that all signs of it are totally gone, as if it never even existed in the first place. According to Leo, when we were pulled back onto the ship, it blinked and shot away unfathomably fast in the direction of the Mariana Trench. From the data collected and the way the sound slowly dissipated, Leo said they thought it might have sunk into the trench, that maybe it's hiding, waiting, reassessing. We can't see it anymore, but we can still hear it. That upsweep sounding noise is still being recorded to this very day, at this very moment. Quieter, farther away, but still there. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see if it comes back out again. Hey again, it's me, Tommy. I don't think I told you my name before. I'm the Chief Warrant Officer for the Coast Guard who was there when those two planes were, neutralized. Dr. Pike asked me to take over recording this leg of the expedition for her. She's been absolutely swamped with work. I don't think she even sleeps anymore, which, I guess, also answers the question if I took Cooper up on his offer. I did. We're about a day out from the trench, surrounded by open ocean and obscurity and terror. And I'm scared. I'll skip that Lord of the Rings style exposition about journeying and get right to the meat of it. I will say, though, that it took a while for us to get all the way out here, and I'm looking forward to getting off this damn boat. Cooper's here, of course, as well as a lot of other more serious-looking men in black suits. They seem to not like him very much, but he doesn't seem to care, seems amused by it, actually. I could be wrong, though. We cast off over a week ago, but have only learned a little more about that thing in the time that's passed since the planes and rocket launcher. Several tests have been done on the sample Cooper obtained for Leo, but there's a slight problem. The substance seems to defy and meet every expectation of it, like it knows it's being observed. It shifts from something recognizable to something utterly alien. And the scientists on board disagree about the thing inside those planes being the same as the thing making those noises we're headed towards. And those noises, they're haunting, echoing through the waters towards us, making those who listen look around with frightened, grim eyes. They sound intelligent, like they're speaking, trying to tell us something. Several people, including Dr. Pike and Cooper, have been trying to decipher at least some of the sounds, but to no avail. Speaking of Dr. Pike and Cooper, I never see one without the other anymore, and it's pretty obvious to everyone that they enjoy each other's company. And honestly, between the two of them, I have a feeling we'll figure this all out. Hopefully, sooner rather than later, so we can all go home and sleep easy at night. And hopefully nothing bad will happen along the way. Hopefully it won't come to Plan C. 3 days ago, I woke late and scrambled up, not wanting to miss the briefing. But when I got to the bridge, it was clear that I had, so I slipped in, unnoticed. Around me, the hustle of focused work flowed without stop, and I tried to insert myself into it without getting in the way. I glanced around, looking for someone I knew, and saw Dr. Pike working fervently by one of the windows. Her hair was thrown up into a messy knot, and she had dark bags under her eyes. She was working alone, which was rare. Usually she and Cooper would set up somewhere on the bridge together, working late into the night side by side. I meandered my way towards her, not wanting to interrupt, but also wanting to ask her the singular question that had been on my mind ever since I first saw them together. So I said, sidling up next to her, "You and Cooper." She looked at me, surprise vibrant on her face. "What about me and Cooper? Are you two?" I'm like, "What?" "No, him." Together we looked across the bridge. He was standing in a small circle of men, listening to one of them speaking. He saw us looking and waved, grinning openly. Pike looked back at me, her cheeks red, and I raised my eyebrows, trying not to smile. "No," she repeated stiffly. "Never." Okay, I said, holding up my hands in a gesture of acquiescence. "So, tell me about this sample." She sighed, clearly annoyed, but pulled open the small cooler on the desk and took out a petri dish containing a fragment of the black substance. It looked strange, and as I peered closer at it, I noticed movement like it was alive. It twisted around slowly, like it was testing the glass, seeing if there was a way out. I watched, mesmerized, not even looking up when Pike started speaking. It's odd, to put it simply, shifting between something like a prion to something I've never seen before. I'm no expert, but it seems alien. I made a small noise, skeptical of what she was saying. "I know how it sounds," she continued, "but there's really no other way to describe it." "Describe what?" It was Cooper. I looked up from the petri dish to see him standing next to Pike. They weren't looking at each other, but I could see Pike's face flush up. "This," I said for her, pointing down at the dish. "It's black and gooey and gross," Cooper said, grinning. Pike rolled her eyes, but she was smiling, so I knew she wasn't mad. "How very observant of you," she said, finally meeting Cooper's gaze. "If only we had known that 3 days ago." He smirked, and she continued. "In all seriousness, though, I sincerely have no idea what this is. To me, it seems like even if this thing and whatever was on those planes aren't the exact same, they're at least related. The main difference being the substance on the planes was more volatile than this." The three of us looked down at the dish. "It doesn't seem like this stuff wants to harm us. It seems, to me, like it's studying us. Learning." "Interesting observations," Cooper said, bending down over the table. The substance in the dish moved slightly towards him and up, like it was looking back at him. I chanced to glance over to where he had come from, and saw that the men were still standing in a circle talking. One or two were glaring over in our direction. I said, hesitating. "Are you supposed to be over there, Cooper?" He shrugged, sitting down and pulling some of Pike's notes towards him. "No point. They're not going to listen to me, no matter what I say." "Miriam, what's this you've written here?" He pointed down at one of the pages, and she leaned over, looking down at it over his shoulder. I left soon after, not wanting to disturb their concentration. The day before yesterday, we all gathered around in the bridge, watching on small screens the descent of one of the unmanned submersibles into the trench. I heard someone say that this was Cooper's idea, the only one they had actually listened to, that he, at the very least, wanted to make sure it was safe before we sent anyone else down there. The picture on the screen was dim, low-res, but it still gave us an idea of what was waiting below. When we finally saw it, an audible gasp rose up around the room. A mass, blackened, thick, was bubbling up from the trench. It was indescribably large. Along the ridge of it pushing out from the trench were an uncountable number of appendages, long and thin, nearly touching the surface, feeling the water. And yet, they ignored the sub as it made its way down through them. Another gasp rang out as we saw what looked like an enormous eye appear on the screen. Its pupil was dilated, bright blue, and moved slightly as it watched the sub approach, but did nothing at all. Only observed. Maybe it's not a threat, someone said from behind us. Maybe we should get the fuck out of here, another voice replied, and a few people cheered. Maybe we shouldn't forget about Plan C. It was one of the men in suits. He was looking directly at Cooper, who returned his gaze, unyielding. In the end, the general consensus was that it would be safe enough to send people down, and that we needed to know more about it before we made our next move. Beside me, I heard Cooper mutter a long string of insults under his breath before turning on his heel and leaving. Dr. Pike glanced at me before following him out. I looked back over at the man who had spoken. He was smiling smugly. The night before yesterday, I was in the bridge when one of the scientists handed me a stack of papers and asked me to go find Dr. Pike, or Cooper. And I set off, knowing that if I found one, I'd find the other. At first, I thought maybe they had gone to bed, but just as I was about to give up, I saw them, standing against the railing, looking up. Cooper was leaning close to her, pointing up at something in the sky, guiding the line of her gaze with his arm. And the way she looked up at him, well, I didn't really want to disturb them. Pike saw me first, then Cooper turned and beckoned me over. Both acted coolly as I approached, but Pike seemed embarrassed and wouldn't meet my gaze. I said, I can come back later. Cooper smiled. No, please join us. I was just showing the Pleiades to Miriam here. Oh, the 7 sisters, right? Yes, except there aren't 7, Pike said, still looking up in the direction of the constellation. What? She's right, Cooper said. Look for yourself. I did. She was. I opened my mouth to say something, but Cooper continued. Have either of you ever heard of Tabby's star? Pike spoke up immediately. That's the one star they discovered, the odd one. Its light is fluctuating irregularly, something they've never seen before. I think they said it was a, something sphere. Dyson sphere, Cooper said. But yes, that's the one. It's gone. Just like that one. He pointed up again at the constellation. Okay, harder question. Ever heard of the Montauk Project? It was my turn to speak up, but before I did, I laughed. You mean that government conspiracy? The one about all those illegal experiments? The Montauk Monster? I was smiling openly now. What about it? Please don't say what I think you're going to say. Cooper smiled apologetically. Sorry, bud, but it's real. 𝐬𝐶𝐚𝐬𝐞𝐫𝐞. He simply nodded his head. I know. But all those experiments, the secrets, the lore, I've heard first-hand accounts of. I'm sorry, but what's happening? Pike asked, cutting in, looking between us with a confused expression on her face. The Montauk Project, Cooper started, but I glanced over, knowing what he was going to say, so I cut him off again, my voice seeping with sarcasm. They allegedly opened a hole in the sky, or were trying to, maybe they unleashed something they shouldn't have. Right, Cooper? Is that why stars are now missing? He simply glanced at me, then leaned back over the railing looking up at the sky. Beside him, Pike gave me a puzzled expression. I didn't return it and looked up too. Maybe, he said finally. Yesterday we arrived. Looking over the side of the ship, you could almost make out that blackness rising from the depths below. The water was glass smooth and inviting. It seemed so safe out. I wanted to go with them. I don't regret it. I never will. I only regret what happened. Before the disaster, right before, Pike hissed to us that she thought she had found something, a message in the sounds we were hearing coming from the trench. We headed out on one of the smaller vessels, halting exactly over the trench proper. The air above it felt electrified, thick, and we didn't speak as we suited up. It was only a precaution in case the subs failed in some way. But we didn't even get a chance to launch the subs, and we're just getting ready to climb into them when it hit the starboard side, knocking the vessel over like a toy in a bath. It was only after I had hit the water and started to sink that I realized what had happened. I flailed out, grabbing my oxygen tank and shoving the mouthpiece in, blowing up and into my goggles, clearing them. Around me, I could see an uncountable number of bodies, some limp, some still moving. I started to swim up when I saw it, rising up from below, a nightmare. It was like a roiling mass of worms, cigar-shaped and fully black. So black, it seemed to tint the color of the water around it, turning it into an impenetrable veil that hid its dreadfulness. But I did see something that will haunt me until the day I die. It was Pike. She was sinking fast, too fast, and somehow her mask and her tank had become dislodged. I saw her reach up, out, and I saw Cooper swimming after her. And I saw that it was too late. The black tendrils were already wrapping themselves tightly around her torso, pulling her back down towards the gaping hole that descended into darkness. The one giant, I was bright red now, pulsating, full open, and horrible. And I saw her face, barely lit by the weak light of sun. She was looking straight at Cooper. Her eyes were huge. I could see the hope slowly die in them as she was pulled down. The last thing I saw, the last thing I remember, was the way the bubbles gleamed as they rose out from her mouth, open in an unheard scream, and her hand, reaching up, going limp, before floating listlessly above her like a sick streamer. I must have blacked out. Cooper must have pulled me up, because one moment I was watching her disappear, and the next several hands were latching onto me, pulling me up and onto a lifeboat. Disoriented, I glanced around, trying to make sense of the screaming, the crying, and the water boiling viciously and fast around us. We made it back to the larger vessel, and I suddenly remembered her face, the way her arm floated loose in the water. I panicked, and in my desperation to get back into the water to save her, in that mad frenzy, Cooper disappeared. And as I calmed down, my breath simmering back to normal, I realized he was gone and looked around for him. I pushed the medics off me, telling them I needed to take a walk. I found him where I saw them only hours before gazing up. "Cooper," I said softly, walking up to him from behind. He was leaning against the railing, contemplating the stars above us, the wind slightly ruffling his still wet hair. "Cooper, I'm sorry." He looked down and met my gaze for the first time since we lost her. His eyes were hard, but behind them, there was something else, sorrow. And when he spoke, his voice shook once before he regained composure. "You think that's the first person I've seen die? The first person I haven't been able to save?" I said nothing, staring at him with wide eyes. He brushed past me, knocking my shoulder with his as he did. "Don't be ridiculous. I have work to do." "Cooper." He turned, staring at me, but I avoided his gaze. Suddenly, my throat felt hot and my eyes burned. I blinked rapidly and said in a low voice, "I've never seen anyone drown like that." And she was right there. My voice trembled and I stopped. "Hey," Cooper said suddenly, reaching out and grasping my shoulder firmly, a softness rising in his voice. "I'm sorry. I should have realized, are you okay?" I took a deep breath and swallowed. "I don't know. How do you just forget about something like that?" He sighed long, low. "You don't." He lowered his arm, and we stood in silence, listening to the waves lap up against the sides of the boat, the breeze cold on my hair and my skin. I shivered. Above us, the stars twinkled mischievously, like they had secrets they were bursting to tell. Around us, the sounds of men yelling and equipment beeping and clanging rang through the air. They were loading up the payload. "Plan C," I breathed. Cooper sighed again, shaking his head. Usually, I would be on board with fire and gunpowder. But this is not a final solution, only a fearful one. He looked exhausted, defeated, and without thinking I heard my own voice sound out. "Let me help you." He glanced at me, silent for a moment, thinking. "No, let me help," I repeated with more conviction. "I can't risk it. Why won't you let people help you?" I met his gaze. His expression was totally unreadable. "If I need help, I'll contact you. How will I know it's you?" "You'll know." He turned and walked away. Today, I don't really know what to do. And it'll be a while until I'll be able to see the coastline of California bobbing over and beneath the horizon. So I wandered around the ship aimlessly, ignoring everyone around me, and found myself in the bridge. Dr. Pike's coat was still draped over the chair where she had left it the night before. At first I hesitated, not wanting to touch it, but I couldn't just leave it there, unclaimed, unnoticed. I figured Cooper would have taken it by now, all her belongings, but then I realized how foolish it was to think that. I hadn't seen him since he walked away the night before. I picked it up gently, placing it over my arm, and as I did, a single scrap of paper fluttered down, catching my eye. I looked at it. not wanting to see her handwriting or read anything she wrote before. But I picked it up anyway, turning it over in my hands, and saw she had written something on it, something that struck me as strange, and I wondered if it was the message she was going to tell us yesterday. It was only 4 words. The abyss looks back,